There is a moment, quiet, sharp, and unforgettable, when you realize that no amount of messages, tears, or desperate words will make someone stay who has already chosen to leave. In that moment, the mind races. Should you block him? Should you beg? What if you did neither? What if, instead of chasing or cutting off, you simply stood still like a mountain unmoved by the passing wind? This isn't just about love, it's about your inner world. And if you stay until the end of this journey, you'll uncover something deeper than revenge, louder than silence, and more powerful than control. You'll discover you. Ask yourself now, what happens when I stop reaching outward and turn inward instead? There is a quiet strength that lives beneath the surface of stillness, a force so steady it is often mistaken for passivity. Yet, in the ancient ways, stillness was never the absence of power. It was the concealment of it, the gathering of it, the tempering of it like steel in fire. When the heart aches, when the world feels like it is slipping from our hands, we instinctively reach, grasp, cry out. What if the wisest thing you could do was nothing? Stillness is not weakness. It is power under control. The ocean, on a windless day, reflects the sky with perfect clarity. But when the storm arrives, waves thrash and foam, and everything becomes distorted. So too is the mind. When shaken by emotion, we lose clarity. But when we become still, the truth beneath the surface begins to reveal itself. There is a story from the mountains of the East. A young disciple asked his master, "How do I defeat my enemies? They insult me. They avoid me. They do not see my value." The master took him to the edge of a pond. "Drop this stone," he said. The boy obeyed. Ripples spread across the surface. "Now look into the water. Can you see your reflection?" The boy shook his head. "Wet?" said the master. Minutes passed. The ripples faded. The water stilled. "Now, can you see?" "Yes," the boy whispered. The master smiled. "To see clearly, you must be still. And to defeat your enemy, you must first stop being at war within yourself. When we chase, when we beg, when we act from fear of loss, we become like the rippling pond, disturbed, unclear, powerless. True strength is not in proving your worth to another. It is in returning to the sacred place within you that does not shake even when everything else falls away. In daily life, this might look like choosing not to reply to that message that was meant to provoke. It might look like taking a walk in the forest instead of arguing, or simply sitting with your breath when the mind demands action. These moments of stillness are not escapes. They are reclamations of power. In nature, the great mountains do not move for wind or rain. They endure not through resistance, but by simply as being. The lion does not roar when the jackal barks. It waits, watches, and acts only when the moment is aligned with its purpose. Can you allow yourself this dignity? The Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But stillness does not mean avoiding adversity. It means facing it without flinching, without reacting, without allowing it to define your actions. The modern world teaches that movement is strength, that to respond is to win. But in the deeper teachings, stillness is the foundation of all deliberate movement. Just as the archer draws in breath before releasing the arrow, just as the monk bows before he speaks, power begins in pause. When someone withdraws their attention, their affection, their presence, your instinct may be to rush in, to ask why, to restore balance by force. What if, instead, you became like the moon, unchanged by who watches or does not watch, yet luminous all the same? In the silence of stillness, you meet yourself, and often you discover you were never missing what you thought you had lost. You were only far from your own center, and now you are returning. Let us walk further along this path. There is a difference between reacting and responding. One is instinctual, fast, unmeasured, often chaotic. The other is deliberate, slow, rooted, conscious. To react is to give power away. To respond is to reclaim it. When a person distances themselves from you, the reactive mind says, hey, they are leaving. I must stop them. I must speak. I must fix. But in the quiet space between stimulus and action, there is a different voice. It says, if pause, breathe, feel, then choose. That space is where transformation begins. Imagine fire. It consumes whatever touches it. That is reaction, hot, wild, temporary. Now imagine the mountain. It holds centuries of storms, yet it endures. That is response. Patient, timeless, sovereign. There is a Zen parable of two monks walking along a muddy road. Come across a young woman unable to cross. One monk lifts her onto his back, carries her across, and sets her down. Hours later, the other monk says, you should not have touched her. It's against our vows. The first monk smiles gently. I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? This is the essence of reaction. Clinging to what has already passed, burning with what no longer needs to be fed. When we react, we carry the weight of the moment far beyond its time. When we respond, we set it down. A simple example from life: someone sends you a hurtful message. Your fingers twitch to reply, angry, defensive, emotional. Instead, you put the phone down. You breathe, you wait. Perhaps hours later, the need to respond is gone, or clarity arrives, or compassion appears. That is self-mastery. That is the art of responding. The natural world offers many teachings in this. A tree does not react to every gust of wind. It sways, it allows, it bends so it does not break. In winter, it sheds its leaves not out of despair, but because it understands cycles. It responds to the season, not with panic, but with grace. Confucius once wrote, the superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions. This is not to say you must be silent forever. Rather, that your speech and actions should arise from clarity, not chaos. The deeper your silence, the more powerful your voice becomes when it is finally used. In relationships, especially those marked by confusion or distance, it is easy to feel powerless. But reacting, blocking, begging, arguing is not power. It is noise, and in noise no true listening can occur. Instead, become the quiet presence that holds its shape, regardless of what enters or leaves your life. Consider this: the mountain does not chase clouds. The sky does not rush to hold the bird. Let what comes, come. Let what goes, go. Your work is to remain centered in your own being, steady in your awareness. In this state, something magical happens. You no longer seek validation through reaction. You become aware of your own value so deeply, so intimately, you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of it. Your silence becomes golden. Your pause becomes radiant. This is not about pretending to be unaffected. It is about learning to witness your emotions without becoming enslaved by them. Anger may arise, sadness may flow, but you are not anger, you are not sadness. You are the awareness behind them, the calm observer beneath the storm. To respond, you must first witness, and to witness, you must be still. When you master this, you begin to live differently. You no longer measure your worth by who stays or who leaves. You no longer trade your peace for moments of fleeting attention. You no longer respond to every invitation to chaos. You become like the early morning mist, gentle, quiet, and ungraspable. And from this state, the world begins to meet you differently, because you are no longer reacting to it. You are creating from within. So, pause now. Let the breath return. Listen not for answers, but for the space where answers will come. What would happen if instead of reacting, you allowed stillness to rise? What would shift if you trusted the silence more than the noise? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. And from that nothing, everything begins again. There is a sound deeper than the spoken word. the sound of letting go. Not with bitterness, not with pride, but with clarity. When the heart clings, it creates noise. Not the kind we hear with our ears, but the kind that clouds the soul, confusion, desperation, longing twisted into illusion. We believe that if we hold tighter, they will stay. That if we try harder, love will return. But in the teachings of nature and silence, we learn something else. Something gentler and far more profound, that sometimes the most powerful form of presence is detachment. Clinging is the echo of fear. Detachment is the language of self-respect. One creates ripples. The other restores stillness. The mind says, if I let go, I will lose. The heart says, if I let go, I might find peace. And the soul, the deepest part of us, knows that to release is not to abandon love, but to rise above the need to possess it. There was once a young seeker who held tightly to a small bird he had found injured in the forest. Every day he fed it, kept it warm, spoke softly to it, but he never let it go. If I open my hand, he thought, it may fly away and never return. And so day by day the bird grew weaker, not stronger. One morning the master found him weeping beside the lifeless bird. You gave it everything, the master said, except freedom. In that story lies the essence of our struggle. When we cling, we say to the other person, my peace depends on you. My worth lives in your presence. But nothing alive flourishes in captivity, not birds, not hearts, not souls. In daily life, detachment may look like silence after unanswered messages. It may look like choosing not to refresh a page, not to scan their world through screens. It may mean being with the ache and not feeding it. This is not indifference. It is sacred self-preservation. It is space given to yourself so your spirit may breathe again. In nature, the lotus rises from the depths of mud and darkness. Yet it does not cling to the mud. It grows through it and beyond it, unfolding petal by petal in the morning light. The mud was necessary, but it was not the destination. The lotus does not shrink itself to fit where it no longer belongs. Chuangzu once wrote, when there is no more separation between this and that, one sees the world clearly. Clinging creates separation between who we are and who we could be, between the truth and the illusion we build. Detachment brings us closer to unity, not only with ourselves, but with the natural unfolding of life. To detach is not to stop loving. It is to love so deeply that you honor another's freedom, even if that freedom leads them away from you. In that space, you are no longer begging for crumbs of attention. You are dining at the table of your own presence. Detachment is the moon that does not cry when clouds cover it. It knows the clouds will pass. It knows its glow is not diminished by momentary shadows. Let us walk a little further now, deeper into the forest of self-understanding, to the place where transformation begins, not with striving, but with surrender. So often we are taught to force outcomes, chase what we desire, to push against what resists us, to mold reality into our will. But force creates resistance. True transformation comes not through control, but through alignment. When water flows, it does not try to break the stone, simply moves around it. Over time, it carves entire valleys, not with power, but with persistence and harmony. This is the secret of nature. Transformation through alignment. A young student once asked his master, "How can I change the mind of someone who does not love me?" The master said nothing. Instead, he handed the student a branch and pointed to the river. "Try to stop it." The student placed the branch into the water, but the river bent around it, dancing and flowing as if the branch were nothing at all. "What did you learn?" the master asked. "That I cannot stop the river. And what happens if you float with it instead?" "Then I move without struggle." "Exactly," said the master. "So, too, with love. when someone withdraws their affection, their energy, their presence, you cannot push the river to return to its source. You cannot bend the current of their will, but you can flow with the movement, and in doing so, discover paths of your own that were hidden before. In daily life, alignment may mean no longer trying to change someone's mind. It may mean letting go of the fantasy of what could be and instead aligning with what is. It means turning inward and asking, what would it feel like to stop resisting this moment? Transformation, then, is not becoming someone new to be loved. It is returning to who you were before you forgot your own light. It is aligning with truth, not illusion, and truth always liberates. Look to the sun. It does not follow the flowers. It simply shines. The flowers turn toward it because it is aligned with its own nature. Are you aligned with yours? There is a story of a sculptor who spent months trying to perfect a statue. Every chisel felt like failure. One day, in frustration, he threw down his tools and sat in silence before the block of stone. In that stillness, he saw it differently, not as something to conquer, but as something to reveal. Slowly, gently, he began to carve not from force, from presence. The masterpiece emerged, not because he changed the stone, but because he aligned with its essence. In our relationships, we often try to chisel others into what we imagine they should be. Or worse, we chisel ourselves into smaller shapes just to be accepted. But when you align with your truth, you no longer shrink, you expand. And in that expansion, you either attract what is meant for you, or you realize you no longer need what once consumed you. The Bhagavad Gita reminds us, you have a right to your actions, but never to the fruits of your actions. Let not the fruits of your actions be your motive, nor let your attachment be to inaction. This wisdom whispers, do what is true, but release the outcome. Align with right action, and let the river carry what it must. To force is to believe that life should obey our will. To align is to understand that life has its own rhythm, and it is wiser than we are. You were not born to chase. You were not born to convince, contort, to plead for place in someone else's journey. You were born to align with integrity, with purpose, with peace. And when you do, the world responds, not always with the outcome you hoped for, but with a reflection of the wholeness you now embody. Pause here. Let these truths settle like leaves falling into still water. Can you release what you're holding with white-knuckled fear? Trust that something else, softer, truer, may rise in its place. Can you let go not as a final act of despair, as a sacred beginning? Can you stop forcing and instead remember how it feels to simply be? These are not questions to be answered quickly. They are seeds. Let them rest in the soil of your heart. And know this: when you are no longer grasping, no longer chasing, no longer bending against the flow, you are free. And from that freedom, your truest self begins to bloom. When the heart is wounded, when clarity is lost, when the soul trembles in the shadow of uncertainty, this is the time when we are most tempted to act quickly, to fix what is broken, to reclaim what slipped away. Yet what if the answer is not in movement, but in still observation? Emotions, intense as they may be, are not the entirety of who we are. They are like weather patterns passing storms in the vast sky of our consciousness. To identify with them is to mistake the cloud for the heavens. But when we remember that we are the sky, not the storm, something within us softens. We stop wrestling with the passing and begin resting in the eternal. Emotions are not enemies. They are sacred messengers, but they do not require us to obey them. Fear may knock, but we do not have to open the door. Sadness may sit beside us, but we need not invite it to stay forever. The wise path is not to suppress feeling, nor to let it rule our steps, but to hold it like a guest, welcomed, seen, honored, but never mistaken for the master of the house. There is a story told in a quiet temple hidden deep in the mountains. A disciple, troubled by anger and longing, came to his master and said, "I am like the wind, strong one moment, scattered the next. I cannot hold peace." The master led him to a calm lake. "Throw this pebble," he said. The disciple obeyed, and ripples spread across the surface. "Now," said the master, "make the water still again." The disciple waved his hand. More ripples came. He tried to push the water down. It only grew more chaotic. He sighed, defeated. The master smiled. "Sit, wait." And as they sat in silence, the water stilled itself. "Peace," said the master, "does not come by force. It comes when you no longer stir the water." In daily life, this moment of stilling may come in small acts, when we step away from the conversation instead of escalating it, when we breathe deeply rather than speak hastily, when we journal what we feel rather than send a message we might later regret. These are quiet choices, but they are the seeds of inner mastery. In nature, the sky does not resist the cloud nor chase it away. It simply allows. And in time, the cloud passes. So too with our pain, we are not meant to hold it forever, but to let it pass through, leaving only wisdom in its place. A teaching from the Dhammapada offers this truth. As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame. Let this be a reminder: your stillness is not ignorance. It is strength. Your calmness is not indifference. It is the steadiness of one who sees clearly even through tears. The one who can feel deeply without drowning, who can allow emotion without becoming consumed. This is the one who walks the middle path, not numb, not reactive, but conscious, present, free. And in this freedom, a greater truth begins to dawn on, that what we thought was loss was actually a form of liberation. There is a quiet moment in every letting go when the grief loosens its grip and something unexpected rises. A soft whisper from within, saying, "I am still here, or I have not been broken. I am not less because they left." This whisper is your true self, not the self defined by others, the self returning to its center. Letting go is often misunderstood. It is not an act of defeat. It is an act of release. It is not the end of love, but the beginning of self-love. When we let go, we are not losing the person. We are losing the illusion that we needed them to be whole. There is a parable of a traveler who clung tightly to a heavy bag of gold while crossing a wide river. The weight pulled him under, but he would not let go. "This is my treasure," he gasped, struggling against the current. A fisherman on the shore shouted, "Drop the bag, or you will drown." But the traveler hesitated, until at last he let go. He emerged from the river soaked but alive. And as he breathed in the mountain air, he whispered, the treasure was never the gold. It was this breath, this life, this freedom. So many of us carry emotional gold that weighs us down. Memories, expectations, stories of what might have been. We carry them not because we need them, but because we fear the emptiness they leave behind. But that emptiness is not a void. It is space. And in space, new growth begins. In personal experience, you may recall a time when someone left your life and it felt unbearable. The mind clung to images, to words, to hope. Yet, months or years later, you look back and realized their absence made room for your transformation, your strength, your peace, your awakening. These things were born from the space created by their leaving. Nature reveals this truth in every season. The tree does not grieve the falling leaf. It knows that in letting go, it prepares itself for rest, for renewal. And when spring arrives, it will bloom again, not because it clung, but because it surrendered. The poet and mystic Kabir once wrote, "Wherever you are is the entry point." This means the moment you choose to let go, no matter how late, becomes your beginning, you need not wait for perfect readiness. The act itself becomes your liberation. Letting go is not always loud. Sometimes it is a quiet morning where you no longer feel the need to check your phone. Sometimes it is a night where you sleep deeply, no longer haunted by memories. Sometimes it is a single breath where you whisper to yourself, I am enough. And when you reach this place, not of forgetting, but of acceptance, you return home to yourself. There is no force more powerful than one who has made peace with letting go. Because in that peace, nothing can be taken from you. You have already released what no longer serves. You are no longer seeking completion from outside. You have remembered the truth you always carried within. So pause here in this sacred stillness. Feel the wind not as a threat, but as a messenger. Let the leaves fall not as losses, but as invitations. Let the water flow. Let the sky clear. Let yourself rest. And know this, the journey back to yourself does not begin in battle. It begins in surrender. And from that surrender, you rise, whole, rooted. So don't block him. Don't beg him. Just breathe. Just pause. Just return to yourself. And in that return, you become the very thing he and the world cannot look away from. Because silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Ness is not inaction. It is deep presence. And detachment is not coldness. It is divine warmth turned inward first. When you no longer need them to come back is often when they do. But by then, you may have already found something far greater than love from another. You may have found peace with yourself. And that, dear listener, is the kind of love no one can take away. Pause this. Reflect. Then perhaps listen again, not with the ears of the heartbroken, but with the ears of the one finally waking up